Hello, dear viewers. If you have a pool and you have sun, then I'll show you how you can heat your pool or jacuzzi water for free. Stay tuned. Hello, dear viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in again, especially the hobbyists. Today's topic is water treatment, or rather, heating up water. The hobbyists among you know that I built a jacuzzi here on Koh Samui. It holds 9,000 liters, and we are super happy with it. The whole system works wonderfully, the water treatment. And now I want to go one step further. I've noticed, or rather we've noticed, that it's very pleasant when the water is around 30 or 31 degrees. After all, you're in there to relax. The jacuzzi isn't big enough to swim in to generate body heat while swimming or anything. You just sit in there comfortably. You drink a glass of wine or a beer, especially in the evenings. And if the temperature drops to 28 degrees before you get in, you just don't feel like it anymore. And then I had an idea. I saw a large parabolic dish at the landlord's place downstairs, and that was the initial spark for the whole thing. To heat water for pools or jacuzzis, there are standard heating systems available that mostly use surface area to warm the water and then feed it into the pool. So I'm very well aware of that. But I don't have the space. So I thought I'll concentrate the sun's energy, meaning everything should be powered by solar energy, because it is a luxury after all. And for that, I don't necessarily want to waste electricity. Yes, parabolic mirrors. And then I did some research on the internet and found out that in India and Pakistan especially, they use them to heat water. Yes, you can easily heat water that way. You wouldn't believe it, but right in the very center, it can actually reach a good 1,000 degrees Celsius. So now I'll begin by carefully sketching out the setup for you. And every picture tells more than 1,000 words. So what do we have? First we have the pool. We have the pool here, and as you can clearly see, there's water inside. That's a total of 9,000 liters of liquid that we have stored in there. And it currently has a temperature of approximately 28 degrees Celsius, which is quite warm for this kind of environment. When it's already getting too cold for us. In addition to all that, we naturally have a system, a circulation system. We have the drain, what was the name again? Where the water overflows, which then goes to the pump. And we have a pressure line. We have 4 nozzles there. So I don't want to touch this system. That's very important. You could also integrate it, but I have too many concerns that the working system would stop working, because I've already had a bad experience with that. So this water is to be heated, and then we have a satellite dish here. It has up here a core, a heat exchanger. And what we have underneath here, this is important. We have a tracker system. And there are 2 motors inside here. These motors are located within this section and are responsible for driving the mechanical parts of the device, allowing it to function as intended. So about the solar dish, I have to say I've already ordered it. It's 1.80 meters in diameter. I ordered it from China. It was very easy. A copper spiral is supposed to go in here, which runs conically. So that means there is the up And here, as you can see, the pipes are very close together in this section. They are connected to each other so that when the reflected sunlight goes in here, it always hits one of the copper lines. Since it's 1,000 degrees up here, arise, that is naturally a source of danger for a copper pipe. For example, there must be no solder joints in there because solder starts to melt at 450 to 500 degrees. And we also need to have a vent here at the highest point when you fill the whole thing up so that the air can escape. Then around that area, some insulation. And in front of this, a glass plate is placed that is heat resistant to capture the light. For instance, you can use a glass pane from a microwave or a stove. Borosilicate, I think the glass is called. It is a special glass, heat resistant, so that the heat stays inside here. And then the copper lines can come out. And on the outside, you can attach a flange or a compression fitting. So that is very, very important up here. Then we also need to have a safety system if, for example, no more water is coming in, because, for instance, the pump is broken, it's jammed or whatever, so that the motors here no longer receive any voltage and thus the dish is no longer tracked. Because as soon as the sun is out of the collection area, then the focal point also moves out of here, and then you can secure it. You see, there is quite a lot to deal with that you have to pay attention to. So since I do not want to change anything on this system, we have to do something separate here. On one hand, I want to have warm water available up here, which goes right in there. And cold water, which is always found at the very bottom in the pool area, should come out here, providing a refreshing and chilled sensation. Since the water in Thailand is very, very high in lime, you cannot feed this water that flows through here directly into it. Otherwise, it will calcify very quickly. From what I have read on the internet, for a spiral like this, the pipe diameter is between 10 and 12 millimeters. Then those things are closed. What we need to have, we must have a heat exchanger. A heat exchanger is, as you can see, I can also show it right here now, just for your reference. Connect. And here, all heating technicians, please. The specialists in this field are welcome to leave a comment. I want that so that I don't forget anything at all. So the whole thing doesn't work yet because there's no pump in between. So a pump has to go in between. And the pump, it needs energy. It needs energy. And here's what we'll do. Since the power goes out sometimes in Thailand, as everyone knows, we'll do this. Here we'll put a large panel. We'll attach it here to the satellite dish somehow so that it tracks along. And here, it gets power from that. That means when the sun is really shining down intensely and the demand for energy is highest, then the pump also gets the power. Furthermore, now we also have a system down here. Here we have a system too. The pool water goes through there. That goes into the pool here. Oops, that was the wrong color. So that doesn't work either. Like that, we have to put a pump in between there too. I won't color it in now. So there's the pump. And it, let's say here is one, there is two, also gets power through here. So that they definitely work as intended without any issues or problems. Then after that, we need something else to continue. How should I represent that now? A battery has to go in between here. And that's where it's taken from. And also here on the battery are 3 and 4, which is then connected here. 3 and 4. What I mean is, if the panel doesn't get any power, doesn't see any sun, then the pump, the two pumps, shouldn't fail immediately. Both pumps get their voltage from this battery, and then they continue to run. That's for when, for example, a big cloud passes by. And there's still a lot going on up here in the heat exchanger, so that the pumps keep running. So here in the system, in front of the pump, there must be an expansion tank here to equalize the pressure. There's nothing but a membrane inside, a connection, a pressure relief valve, so that when the water in the line expands as it gets warm, then here in the expansion tank, the pressure is stabilized. And also if there are fluctuations, that's what this is for. So there's also water in it. And a safety valve. Normally you can buy this as a complete unit. So since in my case we are almost 10 meters or even more away from the heat exchanger, I'd like to have the heat exchanger here by the jacuzzi. We need a 1/2 inch line here that is double insulated. It's best to use this here because you have curves. When laying it from a roll, soft annealed copper pipe is best to use here. And that is then insulated with insulation material that can withstand at least 100, 110 degrees. Because here, as I said, it's already 1000 degrees and about 90 to 95 degree hot water comes down here. That then goes through the heat exchanger, which is a plate exchanger. You can also order them like that. I've picked one out now that has 100 plates, which is quite a lot. So from what I've read, about 30 or 40 plates, heat exchangers are actually quite sufficient. But for 5,000 or 6,000 baht, you get even better heat transfer. So, and if 95 degrees is exceeded here, then the motors won't get any more power. And then we have a safety measure up here. With a dish like this, you can get 2.5 kilowatts. That means with 9,000 liters, I can heat the water by about 2 degrees a day. That is a very important point. So if the daytime temperature equals the outside temperature, we have no delta T. Then we can heat the water very slowly. If you were to use a conventional system, basically a flat one, you'd need 2 to 3 times the area. There are 2.5 square meters up here, so you'd end up with up to 7.5 square meters. And I don't have that, So this is a sketch like in kindergarten, but I wanted to explain it to you step by step, and now I've fed all of my information into an AI. So, and then you can see the whole thing much more clearly. Here we have the jacuzzi, which is the object of desire that needs to be heated up. There you have a hot water inlet and a cold water one. Here you have the technical box, and here is the solar dish again. The antenna dishes, of course, don't have mirrors. And there I'm thinking about cutting 2 centimeter squares. And then it has to be a special glass, I've read, also for outdoor use, so that the vapor deposited silver layer doesn't peel off at the edges. You know how old mirrors look. You see it peeling at the edges, and then it looks bad, or it's no longer reflective. So you should spend a little more money on that. Then it's very important to glue the mirrors in with heat-resistant silicone that can withstand around 100 or 110 degrees. Very important. I've already done something regarding the heating coil. As I said, it's conical like this to get a larger surface area for absorption, because it also moves out. Then there's, I haven't even mentioned this yet. Oh, wait, I did mention it here. I have a tracker system. You can also order it from China. It costs around 400 euros. Since they're normally designed to have solar panels placed on top of them, they practically have no external center of gravity from the mounting point outwards. But we have that here. We have the dish right here. That means the center of gravity is somewhere around here, a third of the way from the top part. Then, of course, the motors have to work against that, and they're not suited for it. That means you have to, back here, in the rear area, you have to add a counterweight so that it's balanced. So that's very important. So we have that here too. So we have the hotline. Here is the primary pump. The primary pump is connected to a solar collector. And then we have the heat exchanger here, very important. And here we have the battery. The battery is there to drive the pumps on the right and left, the secondary pump when a cloud passes in front of the sun, and there was intense heat up there before to carry that out. Then, to keep the whole thing safe, we also have a pressure gauge, a pressure release, a tank which isn't even drawn in here. I mentioned the pressure tank. This one here, because you have, in the end, it's a copy of any heating system. The boiler isn't there in my case, but instead here is the solar dish. And it actually has some important subtleties that you really have to keep in mind while working with it. As for the jacuzzi itself, I'm going to do it like this because I want to get it back into operation as quickly as possible. I'll make my changes beforehand. As I mentioned before, I want to add more lighting, LED lighting again, but this time so that they can also be replaced. But I'll make a video on site later to show how that looks. Because after about a year, I noticed the LED strips are dead, and then you have to be able to replace them. So that will be done beforehand. What I want to do is have a suction line in the jacuzzi and a pressure line from the heater, from the solar heater. Just 2 pipes, one very deep down, but not so deep that sediment can be sucked in, and one line that lets the water out at the top. If that all works for a year, then I'll think about it, because I want to drain the water every year. Installing nozzles. That means I would drill a hole in the whole thing from the outside and then seal it accordingly, as I've already shown in a video. For the overflow, no problem. Then it looks quite nice. I don't actually want any pipes in there, but for the testing phase right now, I would actually like to have it that way, currently. Hello dear viewers, would you also like to own a house on Koh Samui, build one, or buy an existing house? I can help you with that. Recently, I've brought together German-speaking companies that can help you with that, including a German-speaking lawyer. If you need further interest and information, click on the real estate playlist up here. Then you'll find the right thing for you. See you on Samui? Yes, so many things that are new, even for me, that I have to learn from the internet. I'm also working with an AI because I get the information much faster that way. Where I can get what in which hardware store here in Thailand before I start searching like I used to. You know, people also switch to Google to find things quickly. So it's much faster nowadays via AI. As I said, I worked out what I want to have with the AI, but it also, for example, forgot the expansion tank as well. And I had looked at a heating plan to see what all is needed. And yes, you have to have that too. Yeah, nice. Could have thought of that sooner, right? So please always move forward with caution, and viewers who are qualified heating engineers can also contribute. Your comments are very welcome before I start. I've already gone ahead and bought the dish. It actually comes to $55, but with the cost of transport from China to here to Samui, it ended up costing me $175. Euros. The AI was kind enough to make a preliminary estimate. I have to expect 900 euros. I don't know how much that is in baht right now. I'll write it down here below. I think 38,000. Yeah, well, anyway. So I have to expect 900 euros for the luxury of having warmer water there. So it heats up by 2 degrees a day. It's worth it to me because we found that we're in the jacuzzi very often and enjoy being in there. And as I said at the beginning, it's turned out that when the temperature is around 30 degrees, it's very pleasant for old bones and muscles. Our jacuzzi isn't there for cooling off. That's what we have the outdoor shower for. And yeah, if you have any ideas about it, feel free to share them. The tracking system, I'm going to buy that complete. It has an integrated sensor so that the plane, usually the solar plane, is always aligned at 90 degrees to the sun. And if bad weather should come, for example, the solar cells, but also the dish, are a large target for the wind. There's also an anemometer included. And then you can set it so that, for example, the dish goes into a horizontal position like a normal bowl. To keep the cross-section here as small as possible when the wind passes by. This is the new project now. The whole thing is going to take a very long time. I'll take you along for the ride. Here again, if I've done something wrong, I'll show that too. Where and how I do it, for example, I was told by the AI that this heat exchanger can't be bought like that. You should have it made by a professional. And here it's the people who install air conditioning systems, including the insulation materials. And things like that, I'd get all of that from them. So that was just an introduction. I hope it wasn't too long. Now you have a sense of what's behind it all. We'll see. It's a tough nut to crack, but we'll manage. Bye.